Hello there, you beautiful people. My name is Willow, and welcome back to another Skyrim challenge run. My last run in Fallout New Vegas as a sniper was fun, so today we're gonna take on something a little more complicated while we find out if I can beat Skyrim's legendary survival difficulty with only crafting. Before we get into the run, let's lay down some ground rules. I can only use weapons, armor, and items that I have crafted. I must play the entire game on the legendary survival difficulty. I can't use any bugs or glitches on purpose to exploit the game. I can only use visual mods, and I cannot use console commands for anything but fixing bugs. With the rules of the run laid out, let's take a look at the challenge itself. I don't usually focus much on crafting systems in games, but I'm interested to find ways to quickly level up my crafting skills in Skyrim. As always, the legendary survival difficulty mode is going to be brutal, but hopefully there will be some fun moments along the way. I write these scripts as I go, and all of this part has been written prior to starting the run. If you want to skip past my starting thoughts, go to the time code on screen now. With them gone, let's dump some info. So I think the key to this run is almost entirely in how efficiently I can gather materials and ultimately gold. Luckily though, the skills will help a lot with that second part. I'm going to need smithing to create and improve armor and weapons, enchanting to further improve all of my gear, alchemy to make healing supplies, and since I'm on survival, I'm going to need to cook a lot, but there's not really a skill tree for cooking food. Also, I want to quickly mention that magic is effectively banned. I know the Atronach Forge is a thing, but it just doesn't seem worth it to me, so I'm not going to pursue it. Other than that, I have no idea what to expect other than a lot of roadblocks. Skyrim has been above and beyond the hardest game I've run so far due to legendary difficulty being brutal, and I'm interested to see what it throws at me this time. But that's enough talking. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos, and let's jump right into the action where the screen fades from black and I find myself sitting in the back of a carriage with some very blue prisoners. We find out quickly that this caravan of red prisoner carts is stopping in a nearby town for some kind of shindig. I jump off the cart and get asked who I am before mighty morphing into a silly looking orc for the Berserker Rage ability before getting told to wait patiently for my execution. I then watch a man eagerly lose his head before taking my place on the chopping block where I get a great view of a giant flying lizard that saves my life by giving the executioner a stern talking to. I then run through the commotion of a city under siege, all the while jumping over dragons and parkouring like crazy until I reach the Keep of Helgen. Here I'm presented with a choice between Ralof and Hadvar, and I decide to go with Hadvar since I plan to do the Imperial questline during this run. I then run through Helgen until I realize the game is on the wrong difficulty and that one of my mods is hiding the difficulty settings. So I quickly go fix my mods before setting the difficulty to legendary. Honestly, I would restart, but I haven't even been in combat yet. I've just been watching Hadvar kill things, so I don't count this as a failure or anything like that. I then decide to just run through the entire keep. I basically ignore every enemy from the hordes of Stormcloak troops to the icky spiders. I dash past them like a fat kid hearing a dinner bell, and once out of the Helgen dungeon, Hadvar tells me about his uncle in a nearby town named Riverwood, so I make my way towards the village, and along the way I touch a magic stone that makes me think good about fighting. Once in Riverwood, I head over to Hadvar's uncle and convince him to give me all of his stuff before having him teach me how to smith weapons and armor. I then make a small mistake by selling my new dagger to the general store without noticing, but you know, mistakes are made. You sell your only weapon in the run, you know, whatever, it's all good, you don't gotta worry. Is that a bit? Why am I talking like that? That wasn't even in the script. Why am I going off script? Oh, get it together, Willow. Yeah, I was watching this Willow video and then just completely lost his mind in the first 5 minutes, and you know what? It's just not good. I think I'm gonna unsubscribe now. Anyways, where were we? Alright, I continue to do some more smithing using supplies from around this guy's forge, and I end up leaving Riverwood with a full set of armor, but no weapon. I then make my way to Whiterun, where I head up to Dragon's Reach and speak with the Jarl on his throne. I tell him of the dragon attack at Helgen, and he takes me to his court wizard, who asks me to go find an old rock from a dungeon in the mountains. I don't feel confident in my ability to do that right now, so I instead head out to one of the forges here in Whiterun and use it to make myself a sword. With a sword, shield, and full set of armor, I feel like it's time to figure out how strong I really am. So I head out to forage for materials while looking for trouble, and it doesn't take me long to find a couple of skeevers, which I start to valiantly fight, and I'm dead. Twice. Yep. I can't even deal with 2 big rats. That was demoralizing, but continuing on, I find I can actually deal with wolves just fine, as I kill one on this mountain pass and another near Riverwood. Fighting them isn't too hard, but I have to make good use of my shield to avoid damage. I then go try to fight a bandit at a nearby mine, and it's going well. I'm getting a lot of hits in, but unfortunately, he is just too durable for me, and I die to his barrage of attacks. I try again, but this time I use the orc's racial ability, Berserker Rage. It should help a ton with combat in this run, as when activated, I get 60 seconds where all the damage I take is halved, and all of my physical damage is doubled. I have a feeling this ability will be critical for difficult fights, and it makes fighting the bandit much easier, but it's still close as I almost die. I decide I need better gear and a ton of gold, so I head back to Whiterun and make my way into the Jarl's quarters in Dragon Reach, where I steal a bunch of silver ingots from him before heading down to the forge to turn them into silver rings for selling. Now, a few silver rings may be a nice start, but I'm going to need a lot of gold very quickly. So I spend a long time collecting salmon roe by catching these jumpin' salmons. Jumpin'. Oh man, my southern's really coming out. Tennessee born and raised, baby. Either way, I catch the jumping salmon in these rivers, and then grab these Nordic barnacles from the water in front of Dragon's Reach, and use these items along with some garlic I've gathered to make some water-breathing potions. These are incredibly valuable, and I level up by sleeping at the inn, before waking up and continuing the cycle of gathering alchemy materials for making gold. Next up, I head over to Morthal with a carriage to gather swamp fungal pods along with canis roots for paralysis potions, which will be useful for combat later, but for selling right now. Alas, this trip to Morthal turned out to be a big mistake, as leaving Morthal proves to be a huge pain. I end up dying to everything from skeevers to bears to a random group of bandits and even a wolf trying to leave the swampland and return to the plains of Whiterun. This struggle lasts about an hour, but eventually I do make it all the way back and level up when I sleep in the Whiterun Inn before crafting more potions. Now, I could talk about me running around and collecting materials to make potions for like an hour, and I even have enough footage to do that, but in the interest of keeping you here watching this video, I'll just let you know I ran around Skyrim picking flowers, catching salmon, and diving for barnacles, all the while worshipping giant clubs and stealing from farms along the way. Everybody, it's the mythical giant club raising into the sky. The end times are upon us. Oh, whatever shall we do as we collect our butterflies and the club flies to the sky? Okay, well, that was dumb. I suspect I'm going to be doing this a lot throughout the run, so from now on, I'll just say that I'm making potions and you all will know what that means. So, moving on, I've produced and sold enough potions to be sitting on a nice stack of 5,000 gold. I'm going to use this nest egg of gold to level smithing, but before we do that, I want to ask you all a very simple question. Do you want to save money, eat better, and stress less about food? Well, now you can, thanks to this video's sponsor, America's #1 meal kit, HelloFresh. They're here to help you eat better by providing chef-crafted recipes along with fresh ingredients delivered right to your front door. With HelloFresh, you don't have to worry about meal planning anymore, as with over 45 recipes that can support any lifestyle, you can have restaurant-quality meals from the comfort of your own home. If you're like me and always struggle with finding the time to cook, don't worry, as HelloFresh's lineup has you covered with their quick and easy meals featuring some 20-minute recipes. All of that, and I haven't even mentioned the best part. If you use my link in the description right now, you will get 16 meals for free alongside a decadent sweet treat with every delicious meal. Yep, that's right. HelloFresh is giving everyone free dessert for life alongside your subscription. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description or use my code and get 16 free meals plus free dessert for life when your subscription is active. Alright, back to the run. I start buying smithing materials from the 2 blacksmiths here in Whiterun and craft them into various weapons to allow myself to shoot up to level 30 smithing. I then quickly level up and use a perk point to unlock dwarven smithing before heading over to Markarth, where I use most of my remaining gold to get the materials to make myself a partial set of upgraded dwarven plate armor. I then decide to do a bit of questing here in the dwarven city and start off by heading to the stables and speaking with this man who trains war dogs. He asks me to take some dog food to the palace, and I agree to do so before heading into the town's inn, where I challenge this drunkard to a fist fight. It's going perfectly, as my last Skyrim challenge taught me how to fight with unarmed very well, but unfortunately I accidentally hit a bystander and anger the entire bar. This means I have to restart the fight, and in round 2, I make sure to drag my opponent away from the other bar patrons, and I just use potions along with Berserker Rage to put the smackdown on this drunkard, allowing me to recruit him as a companion while also making 200 gold. I then leave the inn and make my way over to the palace where I deliver the dog food and get paid before making my way to the alchemy shop here in town. I speak with the owner, who asks me to deliver a potion to the Jarl's steward. I go and do just that before asking the Jarl for work. He tells me how much he doesn't like mercenaries before hiring me as a mercenary to go kill the leader of a nearby Forsworn group. I tell him I'll do it before grabbing a carriage over to Solitude, where I buy a mighty steed from the stable and make my way over to the Forsworn camp. I approach the Forsworn leader and it starts off really well. I'm dealing decent damage, and by using potions I manage to bring him to half health, but his lackey is much stronger and kills me quickly. I try again, this time being hyper aggressive, trying to kill him before he can get any help from his friends. This works out perfectly as I use a couple of health potions and spam quick attacks to kill the Forsworn leader before returning to Markarth, where I turn in the quest, getting some gold and a bit of favor with the Jarl. I then return to Solitude to speak with General Tullius about joining the Legion, and I get told to clear out a nearby fort by Legate Rikke. So I make my way to the nearby blacksmith and craft a dwarven war axe before heading out to the fort, and honestly, I can't do this ordeal justice with mere words, so it's time for a montage. Yeah, that was 29 deaths, and I didn't even manage to clear the fort. This has me incredibly worried about the possibility of beating the game, because this isn't even supposed to be a hard quest. It feels impossible despite doing a ton of prep work before battle. I crafted the best gear I could with the money I had. I had a ton of potions, but it just didn't really matter. Sure, I was able to get through the outside of the fort, but that just doesn't feel very good whenever I know that the next time I come here, I'm gonna have to fight higher level bandits, and they're gonna have better gear than I have right now. Either way, that's enough moping about failing. Let's move on, and the only path forward that I see is going to make the game a lot harder. I need to get levels in combat skills, and that's going to cause me to level up and make the enemies even harder. But with no other real plan, I start trying to find any fight that's manageable. I start off by speaking with this guy named Armin, who tells me about his father's sword that went missing and how he's tracked it to a nearby group of bandits. I tell him I'll go get it back for him and head out to these two towers where the bandits are held up, and this goes poorly. I die a bunch. The bandits are simply too strong, so I guess this is another quest that I'll have to come back to later. So instead of all of that, I head back to the mine where I killed the bandit earlier and start trying to clear it out. The fight with the first two bandits goes really well. I wipe the floor with them before continuing to slash and bash my way through the mine until I end up dying to one of the last bandits in the dungeon. This is still tough, but very doable, and I keep going at the fight, and while I do end up dying a couple of more times, it's mostly due to my own impatience, and after ironing out all of my mistakes, I kill off all the bandits in the mine and proceed to use a pickaxe to mine all of the iron ore. Speaking of mining, I should mention something. Up until this point in the run, I haven't been allowing myself to use any of the tools in the game as I can't craft them, but honestly, it's silly to leave ore and firewood on the table. I'm still not allowing myself to use lockpicks, but I don't think you all will mind that I use a pickaxe or woodcutter's axe when it's obvious I could just easily craft them without without issue if the game allowed. With the mine cleared, I go off and craft more potions alongside a dwarven bow and arrows, and then go around Skyrim selling potions along the way to Falkreath, where I encounter a couple of skeletons that come out of nowhere. They give me a good scare when I first see them, but the fight with them isn't too difficult as I just use my shield to bash and stagger them before unleashing a flurry of blows with my axe until they fall before me. I eventually make my way to the city of Falkreath, where I sell some potions before making my way into the Jarl's Longhouse. Earlier in the run, a courier gave me a letter from the Jarl that invites me to become Thane of Falkreath. I figure this could be useful, so I go and speak with the Jarl, and he asks me to go kill off a bandit leader that double-crossed him. I tell him I'll do it before crafting some healing potions and heading off to the bandit camp, where I start ripping and tearing through the enemies with ease. I end up dying a few times, but I also have this epic moment where I'm dodging arrows and felling bandits while my health bar dances up and down while I take damage and spam potions. This is the first time that combat has truly felt good in this run, as even in my deaths, it feels more so that I made a mistake than just me being overwhelmed by the enemy's advantage due to legendary difficulty. Either way, after fighting all of the bandits outside, I make my way into this cave to fight the bandit chief. I die a few times before realizing I can just cheese this entire fight. I go inside the cave and fire off an arrow from stealth where I get a critical before running out of the cave. The damage I deal stays, and I can rinse and repeat until randomly the chief manages to lock himself in his own prison. This was incredibly funny as I just get to fire arrows into this caged outlaw until he falls. It is a little bit unfortunate that I cannot get his enchanted weapon due to being unable to unlock the door, but either way, the quest is complete and I return to the Jarl to inform him that the people who double-crossed him were idiots. He praises me and then tells me that I can purchase a piece of property from his steward. So I head over to the steward and give her 5,000 gold to buy a plot of land called Lakeview Manor. This is a part of the Hearthfire DLC where you can create homesteads for yourself. So I proceed to spend the next few hours building up the manor. I do this by running around and gathering materials while crafting potions to sell for gold. I end up leveling smithing quite a bit as it's a very necessary skill for building the manor. Instead of painstakingly describing each process of building the house, I'd rather just give you all a house tour of the finished product, so here it is. What's up everybody, it's your boy Willow, and today I'm here to give you a cribs house tour of my very own property, Lakeview Manor. I got my carriage here, he'll take me anywhere, he's like a chauffeur. And of course, over here to the left, I've got myself a beautiful stable for my pony. Then over here, we got all of the crafting needs I need for smithing. We got an anvil, we got a workbench, we got a grindstone, we got a smelter on the other side of the house, which I'll show you later. We even got a tanning rack. I got a little farm set up here for my wheats. I need my wheats, I need my Wheaties in the morning. And of course, over here, I got myself a cow and a chicken, and even a little area, chicken coop for the chicken to lay eggs, and of course that tanning rack I mentioned earlier. But let's head inside because that's where the real action kicks off. We enter to see an absolutely exquisite, beautiful entryway. You can see my love of hunting on the walls. We got a broom here for people to mop up. Not me, or I mean I guess it's sweep up, but you know, whatever. Got some storage right here for stuff that I just might need when I'm leaving. And then of course over here in the main hall, we got ourselves a nice dining table. It's here for everybody that I invite over, all of my luxurious friends to enjoy. Got myself an alchemy table, which I use with all of my alchemy ingredients over here. Speaking of alchemy ingredients, though, we got to look at the greenhouse. We got all these blue mountain flowers. I already picked them this morning, but you know, they're gonna grow up. They're gonna be able to be used with that wheat from outside to turn into beautiful, beautiful health potions. We also got some imp stools, some canis root for making some paralysis potions. We got a lot of bugs flying around here. Unfortunately, they get to the other parts of the house. This was a little bit of a mistake. But, you know, I just blame Faendal here, my home decorator, for making that one. Then over here to the right, we got ourselves a kitchen that is decked out to the nines with stuff to make delicious, delicious meals for myself. Then over here, we can go ahead and head upstairs where we're gonna find ourselves a master bedroom with all of the fixins, everything you need, even some storage, which I don't use. And of course, back behind us, we got ourselves an enchanting table, which I can use to break down any of that weird magical stuff I find, and make new weird magical stuff. Got the servants' quarters here, mostly just for Faendal. I gave him a second bed just in case he wanted to bring friends over, but he's kind of lonely. And we have another alchemy station over here. Don't really use it, too far away from the door. Up to the roof, we can go ahead and see a beautiful, beautiful view of everything that I own. And unlike for millennials and Gen Z and even Gen Alpha, home ownership in Skyrim isn't a pipe dream. So you can have all of this, and it only costs you a ton of gold, a whole bunch of your sanity, and a lot of time. And of course, you all are beautiful, and I'm gonna throw it back to Willowbot69, who's editing in post. Peace. During that long grind to build up Lakeview Manor, I managed to level up my smithing enough to craft a full set of orcish armor and a new orcish axe. With this new gear in hand and a bunch of new perks and combat skills, I decide it's time to take on the fort again. I try to take on the bandits, but they are a much higher level and wielding better weapons. There's a highwayman orc with an orcish axe who just continually kills me. I try leading him into nearby enemies, but it just doesn't work. I die over and over and over, and it's at this point that I realize that melee combat on its own just isn't going to cut it. I decide I need a change to my tactics, so I return to Lakeview Manor where I continue to craft potions and poisons to use in combat. And while doing all of this alchemy, I level up multiple times, and luckily I can just use my steward Faendal to train my archery skill. So I continue this cycle of using alchemy to level up and then using Faendal to train archery with a ton of gold. I also continue gathering materials from across Skyrim, and every time I see an opportunity to gain some stealth or archery experience, I take it. Whether I'm loosing arrows at giants or killing mud crabs in the swamp, I'm always looking for every little bit of XP I can get. I also find that packs of wolves are great for leveling both the heavy armor and blocking skill, which will be useful later. Now let's talk about my plan for combat moving forward. While I have leveled both stealth and archery, I don't want to be a pure stealth archer. Instead, I'm going to use these as a tool to weaken enemies from afar, and when they get close, I plan to switch back to my shield and axe to finish them off. After all of this prep work, I feel it's time to find out if it was all worth it by taking on the dreaded fort once more. I feel like if I can just get past this one roadblock, I can make a ton of progress. So I start by sneaking my way onto this cliffside near the fort, where I use camping supplies that I crafted earlier to set up a camp. This is very important, as without a camp, I will slowly freeze to death on this cliffside. I then grab my bow and arrow and set up on these rocks, where I start firing away from stealth at the bandits. This is a slow and drawn-out war of attrition. Each enemy takes nearly a dozen arrows to fell, even while I'm getting sneak and random criticals. I start with over 240 arrows, and the fighting is a slow slog. Until this point, I've never really used bows in Skyrim, so this fight was especially useful for learning how to aim the bow. I miss a ton of shots early on, but eventually I start consistently landing shot after shot until I hit a groove taking down the bandits. I also get lucky enough to single some of the bandits out. They run over to the cliff looking for me, leaving themselves isolated, which allows me to jump down and use a paralysis poison on my axe to deal with them much faster than I could with the bow from range. I then proceed to pick off each bandit one by one like I'm the antagonist in a slasher flick until there's only one left standing inside the fort. I head in to try and deal with the last one in melee combat, but I get a bit full of myself and decide I don't need poison to kill them, and this turned out to be a mistake as I die a couple of times to this bandit before returning to the strategy of luring them out and killing them in melee. I then enter the fort itself, where the fighting goes surprisingly easy. I manage to kill off a low-level bandit with ease, and then a higher-level bandit ignores me while I shoot arrows into his face. After that, I have to take on the bandit chief, and I just stunlock him with poison before heading into the last building of the fort, where I use poison and shield bashing to fight a 1 versus 3 fight. It's a tense and difficult fight, but I managed to take down each of the bandits one by one and claim the fort for the Empire. With that hard-fought battle finally won, I return to Castle Dower and speak with General Tullius, who makes me recite an oath to join the Legion. I then get told by Legate Rikke that I'm heading off with her to retrieve a Nordic relic named the Jagged Crown. But before I do that, I need to restock and address an issue. I I can't make poisons or potions quick enough by just farming at Lakeview Manor. That bandit fight ate through almost all of my poison and a large amount of my potions. The solution is simple though. I need to get more farmland, and the easiest way to do that is by heading to Rorikstead. But first, I make a quick pit stop by Lakeview Manor to craft a bunch of potions with what's left of my stockpile of supplies. I then use my carriage to go to Rorikstead, where I head east until I find this little abandoned farm with a hostile ghost outside. I duel with the ghost, and it's honestly not a very difficult fight. I manage to fell him after only a little while in combat before exploring the Golden Hills farm some more. I end up fighting a magic ghost, which also wasn't a very big deal as I could just tank her damage before running her down and taking her out. And after that, I find the remains of a young boy next to a well clutching a sword. After reading the diary, I realize that I need to take the toy sword off his remains and place it in a child's room before speaking with the ghost boy who gives me the deed to the farm. I then go about setting this place up to be a poison factory by planting a bunch of nightshade and then leave the farm to head to Falkreath. I need a steward, and I figured becoming Thane of Falkreath is the easiest way to get one. So I speak with the Jarl, who tells me to go help his people. I start off by gathering every quest I can find in town, and eventually, after talking to old people and Daedric dogs, I decide on 3 simple quests. I start off by taking these ashes from an old lumberjack and delivering them to the town's priest. I then talk with this old man who wants me to steal a letter from the town blacksmith. This seems simple, but for some reason I keep failing a 56% chance to pickpocket the blacksmith's house key, which leads to me dying a few times before eventually getting the key and stealing the letter for the old man. That's 2 quests down and 1 more to go, and the last quest I chose to do is to get the journal of that priest from earlier. It's hidden away in a cave infested with enemies, but I have a plan. I head over to Lakeview Manor and craft a ton of poisons of paralysis using a bunch of ingredients I've gathered across Skyrim before heading to the cave. I have a very simple plan. I'm going to run in and beeline for the journal while paralyzing anything that gets too close. So I do just that, and it's easy as I only end up needing to use a poison on one of the bears before escaping and returning to Falkreath, where I give the journal to the old man and return to the Jarl to become Thane of Falkreath. I then take my new housecarl, Raya, over to the Golden Hills farm where I plant a ton of poison ingredients and appoint her as my steward. I leave her a bunch of gold to hire some farm hands before heading over to Whiterun, as throughout this run I've been stockpiling a ton of soul gems and I think it's time to do some enchanting. So I start off by disenchanting everything I've acquired that's magical before using a bunch of daggers to level up my enchanting all the way to 50, where I put a couple of points into the enchanting skill tree. I then enchant all of my gear using grand or greater soul gems, making me a real force of nature. With this new gear, I go and report to Legate Rikke to help her take the Jagged Crown alongside a bunch of Imperial troops. The combat in this dungeon really isn't anything special. I just use the Imperials as meat shields, and basically it's an easy way for me to train the one-handed and block skills. The only room of the dungeon with any danger is the final room with the Draugr Deathlord and his lackeys. But even then, I take no damage and just help the Imperials kill them. I do have this funny moment where I have to chase the Deathlord as he runs like a wuss, but other than that, this just turned out to be an easy experience pinata for me to get some levels. Afterwards, I take the crown back to General Tullius before he tells me to give a letter to the Jarl of Whiterun. So I head to Whiterun and give him the letter, and he tells me he won't do anything until I help him with the dragons. So we're at an impasse. I've been avoiding doing this quest as it spawns dragons into the game and makes traversing Skyrim just that little bit more difficult. So I need to decide between doing a little bit more prep work or just dealing with the dragons right now. With the help of YouTube live chat, I decide to go ahead and make some better armors and weapons, which means I need 80 smithing. This means I'll need a ton of dwarven metal, so I head over to Markarth and decide to speak with the Jarl in a hopes that he'll make me Thane for helping his people earlier. Instead though, he gives me a quest that I'm not interested in right now. With that plan a bust, I head over to this man named Elmo here in Markarth who wants me to kill a massive spider for him. I was really worried that it would be difficult to kill the spider, but it turned out to be laughably easy as I clear out the small spiders with ease before cheesing the giant spider by hiding in this tunnel and firing arrows into her over and over and over as she is too chonky to get inside the tunnel. With that, I turn in the quest to Elmo and then go around picking up all the dwarven metal I can find from both the spider area and the museum here in Markarth. I then use all the metal to make an absolute boatload of dwarven bows, and this doesn't get me to level 80, so I start running all around Skyrim and trading with every merchant to get dwarven ingots. I continue making bow after bow after bow until I reach level 75 smithing, which took a long time. Luckily though, I know of a way to get from 75 to 80 very quickly, and all it will cost me is a ton of gold. In order to do that, I need to head over to the companions in Whiterun and join their ranks by talking with an old man and accidentally poisoning another man named Vilcus. Now that I'm officially a companion, I can ask this Greymane fella to train me in smithing, and I give him nearly 10,000 gold to get me to level 80 smithing before heading over to this orc stronghold south of Windhelm, which features an ebony mine. Luckily, since I'm an orc, I don't have to do a quest to get inside the stronghold, and instead can just run right in and quickly mine all of the ebony and finally craft my first set of new armor and weapons in like 22 hours. Yeah, we're a solid 40 hours into this run, and I haven't done a single main story quest. This run is brutal, but besides that, I run back to Windhelm and make a blacksmithing potion before upgrading all of my armor and weapons to the legendary level. After that, I go about enchanting all of this gear, and with that, I'm finally done upgrading my gear. And with that, it's time to take on Bleak Falls Barrow with a full set of legendary enchanted ebony armor with matching axe and bow. I hazard to bet that's not a sentence you've heard before. Oh, if you like nonsense like this, you should really like and subscribe, as it helps out the channel a ton. And if you want to see all of the live stream VODs from this run and vote on important polls, consider joining the channel membership program with the join button down below. Alright, with one shill out of the way, here we are at Bleak Falls Barrows, and I start scaling up the mountain, and that's a frost troll. Well, this'll be interesting. I fight the big oaf by paralyzing him over and over, and this makes the fight trivial, but it does end up using a lot of the enchantment on my axe. I continue on my way, fighting up the mountain with these bandits in this watchtower. This is also made very easy by my huge stockpile of paralysis poison, which I plan to use as much as possible with these bandits, as the Draugr we're gonna be facing later are gonna be immune to the poison. I finally reach the dungeon entrance, only for there to be a bunch more bandits outside. I'm also starting to freeze, which slows me down a lot, and despite the fact that I killed the first bandit with ease, I'm not able to close the distance between me and the bandit archers, so I end up dying right here. Trying again though, I barely manage to close the distance and kill the last bandit before they can kill me. This was already way more difficult than I expected, but all of that changes when I enter the barrows. The bandits at the entrance are laughably easy to deal with using my bow from stealth and a quick couple of swipes from my axe. I then proceed to destroy a family of skeevers with ease before encountering this massive spider. But thanks to its huge girth combined with this tiny doorway, I can just use archery to slowly but surely fell the big boy. I then cut down a guy who's trapped in the spider's webs, but I get a little distracted and kill him in the process. Oh well, accidents happen. I take his golden claw and enter the Draugr section of the dungeon. At first, I try to straight up fight the Draugr, but this proves to be slow, and I find it much more fun to run the Draugr into their own traps, so here's a few funny moments that happen throughout this dungeon. That trap just decided to murder them. Okay. This isn't too bad. Oh, look at them. They're just gonna keep filing in one by one. Do it again. Do it again, I dare you. Oh no, I did not mean to do that. Oh, that was meant for a fight much later on. Okay, well, we don't have Berserker Rage anymore, everybody. With all of the Draugr laying dead, or well, more dead than they were, I make my way into the final chamber using this key, and it's time for a little tirade. In my first video, I stated that this key and door system is really dumb, and everyone felt the need to point out that it's to keep the Draugr inside. Well, this makes sense for those in the final room of the dungeon, but all of the other Draugr can just walk out of most, if not all, Draugr dungeons. So in my opinion, it's still dumb, as if you wanted this to be a legitimate way to contain them, then the door should be at the entrances of the dungeon dungeons and not near the end. I don't know why that this is suddenly a hill I'm willing to die on, but it is. Either way, I reach the Draugr Edgelord in the final room, and holy crap, that shout is brutal. It does so much damage and makes me almost immobile. I really wish I hadn't accidentally wasted Berserker Rage earlier on, as this is going to be rough. I end up dying pretty early on, but luckily I do have a secret trick up my sleeve, and it's called the Skyrim Stealth Archer Build. Yeah, I spend a stupid amount of time sneaking and shooting at this Draugr one arrow at a time. Just a solid 10 minutes of shooting arrows at him until I lower his health enough to take him on in melee combat. But after a short bit of bashing and slashing, I fell him and retrieve the special rock for the Jarl's Nerd. I run over to Whiterun and give him the rock before annoying the Jarl for a while until we learn that there's a dragon nearby that I need to go kill. He gives me a fancy hat before I head off, which I quickly disenchant before reaching the Western Watchtower, where I wait for Irileth to arrive with her guards to fight the dragon. The fight itself is relatively boring. I do get brave and attempt some melee combat, but it doesn't go well, so I resort to hiding in the tower and firing arrows into the dragon. Eventually the guards and I lower its health to half, forcing it to stay landed. I then stand on top of the tower and loose arrows into him over and over until I get this sick kill cinematic that is ruined by the camera angles. Either way, the dragon is dead, and I return to Lakeview Manor after looting it to craft a ton of arrows as I nearly ran out while fighting the dragon. After that, I go speak with the Jarl, who tells me I'm Dragonborn and to report to the Greybeards up on top of the biggest mountain in all the lands. I then take my personal carriage over to Ivarstead, which is a town at the base of the 7,000 steps to the Greybeards. I then proceed to scale the mountain by just riding my horse past a ton of angry trolls. For some reason, they really want to slapbox with me, but I just dodge them like a rich kid dodging the draft. I reach the Greybeards and make an amazing discovery. If you walk or run into an NPC that's talking, it skips their dialogue. So I proceed to laugh maniacally while stopping the Greybeards from monologuing on and on. I use unrelenting force to prove to him that I'm a Dragonborn before heading outside to learn how to dash through a gate and stare into Wolfgar's deep blue eyes. I then get told to go find this old guy's dusty horn, but that sounds boring, so instead I return to Ivarstead, bringing the chaos of a cave bear and troll upon the town. I really love moments like this where I drag something from where it's supposed to be into a town and just watch it get destroyed by all the villagers. Moving on, I decide I should spice up Skyrim by winning a civil war for the Imperials. So I return to Gruffballs, who after an annoyingly long conversation with his steward, decides to send a message to Ulfric by giving me his axe to deliver to the false high kink of Skyrim. Wait, oh, my script has kink instead of king. Oh, Ulfric, you naughty, naughty boy. You're so false. Well, on my way out of Whiterun, I decide to craft a full set of light Imperial armor that'll be useful later. I then store my ebony armor at Lakeview Manor and don my Imperial disguise before delivering the axe to Ulfric, who wusses out of Gruffball's challenge. I return the axe to Gruffballs, who tells me that the Imperials are going to aid Whiterun in their defense against the Stormcloaks. I then run outside and get involved in the fight for Whiterun, but instead of describing the combat to you, it's time to bring back a fun game from my first Skyrim challenge run. Yep, that's right, Where's Willow is back, and it's better than ever. If you haven't played before, don't worry, it's simple. All you have to do is watch these clips and try and find me in all of the chaos. It's like an animated Where's Waldo, and just remember, I'm wearing Imperial light armor, which should help you figure it out. With the city defended, I try and go report to the Jarl, only to find he isn't in the castle and that I don't even need to talk to him. Yeah, that was embarrassing, but I move on and report to General Tullius, who has a knee seizure while telling me to report to Legate Rikke in the Pale. I travel across Skyrim yet again and nearly freeze to death while reaching her camp. She sends me off to kill a Stormcloak courier and steal his documents for her. So I spend a long time heading over to this inn because nothing can ever be nearby in Skyrim. I'm just constantly running across the map for these dumb Imperials, or in my first run, the Stormcloaks. Complaining aside, I make my way into this inn and persuade the keeper to tell me where the courier is. I then wait along the courier's path, but get attacked by wolves and an ice wraith. This is really annoying, and to add on to it, I get pulled into dialogue with this stranger while trying to kill the courier who is fighting the ice wraith. I eventually managed to kill the courier and get his documents, but this was just a whole ordeal for no good reason. Upon returning to Rikke, she alters the documents and sends me off to Dawnstar, so I gallop my way over to the capital of the Pale and deliver the altered documents to the Stormcloak General, who does notice that I'm not wearing Stormcloak armor, but for some reason is easily persuaded that me wearing a full set of Imperial armor means that I'm still on his side. Both sides of this conflict are really inept and should know their couriers, I feel, but they don't. Either way, I go back to Rikke, and she tells me to go take part in the siege of a nearby fort. So I get up on my horse and... oh wait. This isn't my horse. Oh, I'm so sorry, Rikke. Please, no. I'm on your side. It's just a misunderstanding. That hurts, Rikke. That really hurts after all we've done together. Theatrics aside, I head to the fort, and you know what that means. It's time for more Where's Willow? With the fort now under the Empire's banner, I head back to Solitude and only die once to gravity along the way. Once there, I report to General Tullius, who sends me off to the Rift to report to Legate Rikke once more. I meet up at the camp while bringing pure chaos in the form of frostbite spiders and one incredibly tanky cultist. Seriously, just look at him. He's just shrugging off half a dozen Imperial attackers, and I'm kind of jealous, but moving on, Rikke tells me to go do some blackmail on the Steward of Riften. I run over to Riften and sneak into the steward's quarters, where I steal an incriminating document. I then proceed to blackmail the steward into giving me the location of a Stormcloak shipment before returning to Rikke. This time I bring a bunch of bandits for her and her troops to fight, because I love chaos, yay! I then get orders to go and ambush the Stormcloaks I found out about, so I get on my horse and spend another 5 minutes running across the map for the umpteenth time. I meet up with Hadvar and then proceed to go all out just this one time to kill off all the Stormcloaks on my own, because Hadvar and his troops are inept. I then return to Rikke, this time bringing an angry bear with me, before getting new orders to take over a nearby fort. I run off to the fort, and of course, here's another round of Where's Willow? I feel I'm throwing these at you a bit too quick, but this video is getting really long and I need to speed up some of it, so this is just the Where's Willow section of the video. Either way, I return to General Tullius, who sends me off to Winterhold yet again to report to Legate Rikke. She wants me to take a fort again, but this time I need to free a bunch of prisoners and, you know, actually fight, since there won't be infinite reinforcements. So I meet up with Hadvar and, oh god damn it, more chaos? There's a bunch of seducer bandits and a frost troll here fighting fighting with Hadvar for whatever reason. The fight is long and drawn out and eats a lot of my health potions and poisons, but after getting stuck in for about 10 minutes, I managed to fell the last seducer before speaking with Hadvar. He tells me of a way to sneak inside the fort, which I promptly use, before dying immediately after getting caught by the Stormcloaks. Well, trying again, I sneakily kill all 3 of the Stormcloaks guarding the prisoners by using the clever tactic of shooting a poisoned arrow and running away over and over. I then save the Imperial prisoners and start fighting for the fort. This fight turned out to be quite rough. The Imperial troops are heavily outnumbered, and I can't kill these Stormcloaks very quickly. I end up dying once in the fighting, but my next attempt I just focus on poisoning as many enemies as I can over and over to give the Legion troops a better chance, as they won't be fighting as many enemies. This takes quite a while, but eventually the long war of attrition ends in my favor, and I get to return to Tullius to tell him the good news. I then report to Rikke once more, this time in the war camp near Windhelm, and she tells me to just go take a fort. Simple enough. Here's some more Where's Willow before we get into the final fight with Ulfric. Okay, so this is it. This is the final fight for control of Skyrim. It's going to be a long and brutal fight, I'm sure. I skip the general's speech by sprinting into him repeatedly, and then run past all the Stormcloak defenders before entering the palace, where after a lot of talking, the fighting kicks off. Yeah, I just paralyzed both Ulfric and his general over and over, and it takes a while, but they both fall. The general then gives me his sword to kill Ulfric, but screw that, I just kill him with my axe and complete the Civil War questline. And with that very anticlimactic end to a civil war, we are 45 minutes into the video. Well, I guess now is as good a time as any to focus on actually finishing the game, so I head over to Lakeview Manor and make a bunch of potions before buying some horse armor from Alvor. You can't beat Skyrim with a naked horse, that's just blasphemy. I then head over to some old Draugr dungeon to get that horn for the Greybeards. The necromancer outside is a non-issue as I kill him with a couple of arrows from stealth before entering the dungeon itself, where things start off well. I kill the first 2 conjurers inside while only taking a tiny bit of damage before moving into the next room, where I encounter a fight between these mages and some Draugr. I help the Draugr win this fight, but it turned out to be kind of a mistake as I quickly die to them afterwards. Trying again, this time I play both sides of the conflict, alternating between damaging the Draugr and the mages until I manage to kill all the enemies without taking too much damage. I then proceed to clear the rest of the dungeon using my bow from stealth, and holy crap, you all were not just memeing about this build being broken. I one-shot a ton of enemies, and those who don't die immediately struggle to close the distance. I feel I've suffered for no reason throughout this entire run by opting for melee primarily. Anyways, I continue to just stomp my way through the rest of this dungeon. I'm killing Draugr, skeletons, and spiders with relative ease from range using my bow until I reach the final room, only to find that the horn is missing, and instead there's a note for me to go to the Riverwood Inn. I make my way over to the quaint little inn and ask for the attic room, only for Delphine to tell me that there isn't one. She then tells me we need to speak and reveals that she took the horn from the dungeon. Long story short, she wants me to prove that I'm Dragonborn by going with her to kill a dragon that's being raised from the dead by Alduin. Well, I guess we're actually killing it again, since it's undead, but yeah, it's semantics. I run over to the dragon's burial mound and try to attack him before he can be fully revived, but this goes poorly and I die to his ice breath. I try again, this time playing it much more slowly. In fact, I even set up a camp to avoid freezing before I just start firing arrows one after the other into this dragon for a really long time. It takes over 10 minutes to kill this one dragon, but I do manage to do so by chipping away at his health one shot at a time until he falls. I then speak with Delphine, who tells me to meet her at the inn again. But instead of doing that, I decide to go to Whiterun and pay this old dude 4,500 gold to give me level 90 smithing. I then immediately realize I don't have any gold left to buy ebony ingots, so instead use my bow to paralyze the blacksmith before stealing all of my gold back and running out of Whiterun to avoid punishment for my crimes. I then return to Lakeview Manor to find a giant attacking my home. He quickly regrets this decision as I poison him over and over with my axe until he dies. I then proceed to take a quick nap and level up, taking the Daedric smithing perk so I can go outside and craft a full set of Daedric armor using Daedra hearts I've found throughout the run. I then use a workbench and smithing potion to upgrade all the armor to the legendary level before taking a quick moment to admire how badass my character looks. Returning to Lakeview Manor, I go ahead and enchant all of my new armor pieces as well as craft a necklace which I also enchant. At this point, I'm pretty sure I won't be getting any new gear for the rest of the run because I don't want to level smithing all the way to 100 just to get new weapons. So all that's left to do is blitz the main storyline and maybe restock one more time if I need to on poisons and potions. So I run over to Delphine in Riverwood, who tells me I'm going to a fancy party and that I need to give all my gear to an elf in Solitude. I go do just that, but after handing my gear in, I realize I forgot to give him my weapons. So I reload and fix this mistake before heading over to Delphine. Now, this is a strange moment in the run. You can argue I failed the run right here as I equipped something that I did not craft. Delphine forces you to wear some party clothes to use the carriage. I personally don't count this as failing the run, as the moment I get off the carriage I unequip the clothing, and thus it never did anything for me in the run, but I'll leave it up to you all as individuals to decide what you think. I then proceed to go through the party by causing this guy to assault a barmaid before sneaking into the back where I get all my gear and start tearing through the Thalmor. This entire section is very easy thanks to me being able to poison every enemy I encounter, so it just turns into a 10-minute romp of hitting enemies who are helpless before escaping the party to return to Delphine in Riverwood. She then sends me to collect her friend Esbern, so I head over to Riften where I get arrested twice. Okay, let me explain. I need to do this quest for Brynjolf of the Thieves Guild, but I can't use lockpicks, so I have to try and pickpocket this Argonian, but I keep failing. I also messed up and didn't actually start the quest the first time, so that led to me getting arrested twice instead of just once. I then head into the Ratways and start fighting my way through. Overall, this is the exact same story as the Thalmor party. My poisons work on every enemy in the dungeon, and although I am quickly running out of poisons, it's still worth it as I can just complete this dungeon with the stock that I have left and then restock afterwards. I continue hacking and slashing my way through the bandits and later on Thalmor without breaking a sweat until I find Esbern hiding out in a little paranoia bunker. I manage to convince him to let me in by telling him that Delphine sent me, and he lets me in his little bunker long enough for me to know that I need to escort him back to Delphine. I then have this kind of tense fight with a Thalmor wizard as they summon an ice Atronach. My poisons don't work on the ice Atronach, so I was really worried about killing the wizard before his icy friend got bored of Esbern and came looking for me. Luckily though, I do manage to kill the wizard before the ice Atronach can get me, and then continue on my way out of Riften without issue, eventually returning to Riverwood with Esbern. After a bunch of dialogue dumping, it's decided that we need to go over to some cave to find a fancy wall for Esbern. So I head off towards the cave, and I'm dead. Yeah, a dragon always spawns here at Scripted, but I forgot about it, and he destroyed me pretty hard. But I do decide that I need payback, so I bait the dragon into fighting these Forsworn, and it's all going well until he decides I need to die again and kills me with ease. But on the third attempt, I manage to stay off his radar and fire over 100 arrows into the big lumbering beast until he dies from the combined arms of me and the Forsworn along with Esbern and what's-her-face, Delphine? Yeah, Delphine, that's the one. After looting the dragon, I run into this cave and start two really simple puzzles consisting of these spinning stones and not stepping on the wrong tiles long enough to pull this chain. I then bleed onto the floor to make this head door open, and with that, we find the world's fanciest wall. I then sprint into Esbern repeatedly to skip his monologue where he tells me I need to learn a shout to defeat Alduin. So naturally, I head over to the Greybeards to see if they know this shout, but first they need to stand in a circle around me and yell at me like I'm some kind of child. I then tell Arngeir I need to learn the Dragonrin shout, and he takes me out back to give me the old Yeller treat. Oh, wait, no, he's just teaching me how to scale the mountain and meet Parthenax, their leader. I'm taught how to yell at fog, which is surprisingly effective at clearing it out, before running past a bunch of ice wraiths and a troll, until eventually I reach the throat of the world to speak with Parthenaxorus, the mighty dragon. He tells me I need an Elder Scroll to go back in time to learn the shout. I proceed proceed to ask Arngeir where to find an Elder Scroll, and he points me towards the College of Winterhold. I head over to the college and use a shout to gain entry before speaking with this orc librarian who ends up pointing me towards some old crazy dude living in the ice fields north of Winterhold. I go speak with the crazy dude, and he casually tells me to go beat Skyrim's hardest mandatory dungeon in order to obtain the Elder Scroll. With that, I head over to these old dwarven ruins and enter a dungeon I've been dreading for a while now. And you know what? I think it's time for a montage, so sit back and enjoy watching me struggle my way through this dwarven nightmare. With the Elder Scroll in hand, I am officially in the final stretch of Skyrim. This is my last chance to stock up on supplies before the final couple of fights, so I make sure to cook enough food, craft enough potions, and forge enough arrows to give myself a fighting chance against Alduin. Once I feel prepared enough, I begin ascending the 7,000 stairs to High Hrothgar, and you should go into the comments right now and let me know if you think I can beat this fight, and while you're down there, you should subscribe and like if you haven't already. Alright. Here we are at the throat of the world, and I set up a camp to help me avoid freezing in the fight to come, before opening the Elder Scroll at the Time Wound and watching the heroes of old banish Alduin to the future. I learn the Dragonrend shout, and then Alduin shows up to fight me. I immediately use Dragonrend on him, and then proceed to die. A lot. I struggle with this fight for quite a while. If I'm not dying to Alduin himself, I'm going down to his shout that causes meteors to fall from the sky. Overall, my strategy is relatively simple. Earlier, I crafted these poisons of lingering magicka damage in order to lower Alduin's magicka to 0. This should prevent him from breathing fire, but won't prevent him from using his shouts. So this fight turns into me juggling quite a few things. It's a balancing act of applying poison to as many arrows as possible, all the while making sure to use Dragonrend on cooldown to keep him from flying away, as it usually means I die because I struggle to land Dragonrend when he is flying, and added on top of all of that, I need to do my best to avoid meteors falling from the sky, as 3 will guaranteed kill me from full health. Despite all these obstacles, I managed to trial and error my way through the fight and bring the World Eater to his knees, and oh my lord, did I really just die after defeating him? I hate the meteor shower shout more than anything else in Skyrim or Fallout. It's so incredibly annoying to deal with, as who looks up in the middle of a fight? It's so dumb, and I know Clear Skies deals with it, but there's a lot to juggle and I didn't want to try it this time. Anyways, I beat Alduin again, and then need to trap a dragon him to find out where he ran off to. So I head over to good old Gruffballs and convince him to let me use his palace as a dragon trap before running all the way back to Parthenax to learn the shout to summon a dragon. I then make my way back to Whiterun and use the shout to lure the dragon into the palace and trap him. I then ride the dragon to Skuldafn, and this area was really rough. It kicks off with me making a mad dash to the temple, as fighting multiple dragons and tons of Draugr just isn't an option in any legendary survival run. The temple itself is a mixed bag. The combat is really difficult, as almost everything here resists poison, and most of the enemies have huge health pools. I brute force my way through the first couple of puzzles, killing each Draugr in melee combat, as I can only get off 1 or 2 sneak attacks before they find me. The fighting eats up almost all of my health potions, and it's at this point that I decide that fighting isn't an option anymore. So instead, I start running past the enemies until I reach these spiders. I can't realistically do this puzzle room if I have to avoid the spiders and the Draugr inside, so I use poisons to paralyze these spiders and kill them before fighting through the Draugr inside. The fight is a struggle, and I only manage to win by using Berserker Rage and my last health potions. From this point on, I have no way to heal or mitigate damage, so it's gonna be rough. Despite this, I have yet to die in this dungeon, which is quite amazing, but that all changes when I encounter this Draugr Scourge Lord who kills me pretty easily. I try again, this time employing Old Faithful against him, the Stealth Archer build. What do you mean we don't have the budget to do that bit again? Oh my lord, who's in charge of budgeting? Oh, WillowBot68. Yeah, I know, we killed him. Whatever, just keep the video going. It takes a long time, but after landing stealth critical after stealth critical for 5 minutes straight, I managed to fell the Draugr and steal his diamond claw to open this door and allow myself out of this dungeon. I then sprint into the portal to Sovngarde before it closes, and here we are. It's the final fight. I paralyze Soon to gain entry into the Hall of Valor, and then run outside and yell at the fog with these heroes of old. We start the battle, and honestly, this second fight with Alduin is always a joke. The only danger I'm in is from the meteor showers, but for some reason he just stops casting that shout, and I end up firing arrows into him for a long time as he fights the heroes. It's so much easier than the first fight, and I feel like it just got mixed up in Bethesda HQ. Make the second fight harder. But I'm not complaining, as eventually the World Eater falls at my hands and I get shouted back to reality where I'm surrounded by dragons, and I speak with Parthenax while answering the question, can I beat Skyrim's legendary survival difficulty with only crafting? Maybe. It depends on how you feel about party clothes. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a challenge suggestion below. I'd like to thank my channel members and patrons, as their support has been tremendous. If you like this run, you'll probably like the challenge run where I try and beat Skyrim with only unarmed damage. You all are beautiful, and this is Willow signing off.